I remember the way the man looked at me when I signed the rental paperwork. Eyes sunken, face tight, like every word he spoke cost him a piece of himself. "The cabin is yours until midnight," he said, not a second longer. I laughed awkwardly. What happens at midnight? Does it turn back into a pumpkin? He didn't smile. "You leave before the clock strikes 12, or it won't let you." I should have walked away right then. The place wasn't much to look at. Tucked away in a stretch of forest so dense it swallowed the afternoon sun by 5 p.m. The cabin itself was old, log walls warped from years of storms and winters, windows smudged with grime, and the front door leaning slightly on its rusted hinges. It smelled like wet pine and dust. But it was cheap, and I needed quiet. So I told myself the man was just a local lunatic, maybe one of those backwoods types who believed in folk stories and forest spirits. Midnight curfews. Ha. I dropped my bags inside, turned on the single bulb that lit the living room, and cracked open a beer. It was barely 7 p.m. By 8:30, I noticed the quiet, not peaceful quiet, oppressive quiet, the kind that presses against your ears and makes you strain for sound. No wind, no birds. Even the trees outside seemed still, like they were holding their breath. At 9 o'clock, the lights flickered. I figured the wiring was old, grabbed a flashlight from my bag, just in case. At 9:45, the door creaked open. I had locked it. I walked over, pulled it shut, and latched the deadbolt again. My stomach churned a little, but I told myself it must have just slipped. The floor was uneven. Doors shift. At 10:15, the TV turned on. Static. The cabin didn't have cable. Or power, apparently, since the lamp had stopped working. Yet there it was, blaring static in the dark. I turned it off, sat in silence. My flashlight cast long shadows across the walls. At 10:47, I heard footsteps in the attic. The cabin didn't have an attic. I froze, flashlight gripped so tight my knuckles hurt. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Not mice, not squirrels. Boots. I didn't move, not until they stopped. Then I grabbed my keys, my phone, my bag. The front door wouldn't open. The lock turned, the knob twisted, but the door stayed shut. I checked the back door. Same. The windows wouldn't budge. The frame groaned when I pushed, but nothing gave. At 11 o'clock, the TV turned back on. No static this time. It showed a grainy video of the cabin, the living room, me. Sitting on the couch, frozen, watching the screen. I looked around. There was no camera, no angle that could show what I was seeing. Then the figure appeared. Not on screen. Behind me. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting through empty space. Nothing. I turned back to the TV. The figure was gone. So was I. The couch was empty. I reached for the remote, but the screen went black. Then something whispered, "Time's running out." At 11:23, the scratching started. It came from inside the walls, slow, rhythmic, like fingernails on wood, from one end of the cabin to the other. I yelled, banged on the wall. The sound stopped until I turned away. Then it was louder, closer. I covered my ears, huddled in the corner. The flashlight started flickering. At 11:42, the door to the bedroom creaked open on its own. I hadn't touched it since I arrived. Inside, everything was the same, except the mirror. The mirror hadn't been cracked before. Now it was shattered down the middle, and something moved behind the broken glass. Not my reflection. Something else. Something wearing me, but wrong. Too still. Too stiff. It smiled. I didn't. I backed out of the room and shut the door. The whisper came again. This time, louder. Midnight, you belong to it. At 11:55, the walls began to bleed. Thin streams of dark, viscous fluid leaked from the seams between the logs. The smell was overwhelming, copper and something sweet, like rotten fruit. My head pounded. The flashlight blinked in and out. I reached for the door one last time. Still locked. Then came the knock. 3 times. Slow, heavy. From inside the cabin. I turned. The bedroom door was open again. Inside stood me. Or something like me. Its skin was pale, eyes sunken and black. Blood stained the hem of its shirt. It raised one hand and pointed at me. You stayed too long. I ran, backed into the kitchen. Everything was pulsing, like the cabin itself was breathing. The wood warped, groaned. I looked at the clock on the oven. 11:59. The thing stepped forward. Its smile widened, splitting impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged blackened teeth. It's midnight. The lights died. The cabin screamed. I woke up in the woods. Dawn breaking. The cabin was gone. No path, no road, no structure. Just trees. My phone was dead. My keys were gone. My bag torn to shreds beside me. But worst of all, I wasn't alone. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Then the voice. You left the door open. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I fled the manor, my heart still thundered like it was trying to burst from my chest. I could feel something watching me. Still. Not from the woods, not from behind the trees. From inside. Like whatever had spoken to me through the house had followed me home. The air in my apartment felt heavier than usual. The digital clock on my microwave flashed 12:00 repeatedly, even though I remembered setting it earlier that day. I unplugged it, replugged it. Still the same. Blinking, mocking. Midnight. Always midnight. At first I told myself I was just shaken. Who wouldn't be? Creepy houses, voices in the dark, broken rules. Maybe I was letting the fear get to me. I didn't want to believe that something had come back with me. Until things started moving on their own. I'd wake up to find kitchen drawers wide open, every cabinet door agape. My bathroom mirror fogged up in the middle of the night with no hot water running. On the glass, smeared in long, crooked strokes, were words I didn't write. It's not done. I began hearing tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the inside of my closet, from beneath my bed, from behind the bathroom mirror, and the voice. It returned. Only this time, it wasn't whispering. It laughed. I went back to the manor, not because I was brave, because I was desperate. Some part of me believed if I went back, if I stepped inside again, I could end whatever this was. Maybe it needed closure. Maybe it needed me to fix my mistake. To leave by midnight the second time and somehow reset the clock. That's what I told myself. But I knew, deep down, that wasn't true. The manor was no longer abandoned, or at least it didn't feel that way. The lights inside flickered with a yellow glow, as if candles were burning behind the cracked windows. There was a smell in the air, not just decay this time, but something sharper, familiar. Blood. The front door was slightly ajar. I didn't knock. The moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me with a gust that sucked all warmth from the room. The same grandfather clock stood in the hallway, its pendulum swinging violently. And the time? 11:59 p.m. I crept forward, every board beneath my feet groaning like it resented me for returning. The air was thicker than before, denser. I could barely breathe without tasting the rot on my tongue. The candlelight from upstairs flickered more violently now, casting warped shadows across the floor that didn't quite match the angles of the walls. And then I saw her. A figure stood at the top of the stairs. Long black hair draped over her face. Skin pale and stretched. She wore a tattered nightgown that hung from a bony frame like wet curtains. Her arms dangled too far. Her neck tilted wrong. She didn't move. Not at first. Then her head snapped toward me with a sickening crunch. Her face was still mostly obscured, but I saw the mouth. It was smiling. Too wide. Why didn't you leave? The voice came from her, or around her, or through me. It was layered. A dozen voices speaking the same words at once. Male, female, young, old. I couldn't respond. My jaw refused to open. The air began to vibrate. I turned to run, but the staircase twisted before my eyes, folding like paper. The walls stretched outward, the hallway lengthening like a nightmare. I stumbled down the corridor, the manor groaning and shifting with each step. The wallpaper peeled back as I passed, revealing hundreds of eyes beneath the surface, bloodshot, blinking, following me. I reached a door at the end of the hallway I swore wasn't there before. Carved into the wood were the words, "Too late." I opened it and found myself in the same room as before. The candlelit room, the clock, still ticking. But this time it read 12 a.m. Again. In the center of the room stood a mirror. Not ornate, just old, tinted, like time had stained it. I saw myself in it, but I wasn't alone. Over my shoulder stood the figure from the stairs. She raised her hand and pressed it to my reflection's shoulder. My real shoulder felt nothing. Then the mirror, me, smiled and blinked. I hadn't. I screamed and turned, no one there. But when I turned back to the mirror, it was just me again. Except there was something wrong with my eyes. They glowed faintly red. Now I'm home again, but I don't remember leaving. I don't remember walking out, or driving, or unlocking the door to my apartment. All I remember is the mirror and the clock in my apartment. It reads 12 a.m., still blinking. To be continued. What do you think is happening to the narrator? Is he being replaced, haunted, or did he never leave the manor at all? Drop your theories in the comments below. Smash that like if the mirror scene creeped you out. And don't forget to subscribe for part 2 of I Was Told to Leave by Midnight. Sleep tight, if you can. Kale 3 மணி.
Yeah. Yeah.